Hello, my name is Renee Barron. I'm the founder of Quintessential Roots. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and today the podcast is about the Delores Canon quantum healing hypnosis technique. Now, there's been some controversy about this. It is a popular trend. A lot of people are having these past life regressions with her method, but there is some skepticism about this method in the Psychiatric Association. Now, but yet many in the medical association have widely accepted the past life regressions, and they have even used that physicians have actually used hypnotherapy past life regressions with a lot of their patients. And so what we're going to do today is explore what QHHT is, how it can help you, and talk about some of the unethical claims that are made by the psychiatric associations and the researchers. But more importantly, what the clients experience with the practitioners who use this technique. So today we have the lovely Alisha Duprey, who is a certified hypnotherapist and QHHT practitioner. And I'm going to bring her in now.
Hello.
Welcome, Alisha. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Can you talk a little bit about quantum healing technique and why you got into this field in the first place?
So I never really imagined myself being in this field. This is not something I would have pre-pictured for myself in the past. I spent most of my adult life in real estate finance in corporate America as a vice president of a couple different corporations. And I was in Colorado for a short period after the recession in 2008 for about 12 years. And I realized I had a calling to come back to California. And I came right as COVID was kind of starting. And I came back and I went back to finance because that was what I've always done and always kind of knew. However, COVID really took a hook into everything and kind of threw everything for a loop. And so in a angry fit with God, I basically yelled and said, don't let me miss my purpose, because I was just kind of miserable with work. I did not want to continue to do real estate or finance. And I didn't want to just go look for a frivolous job. I wanted to really walk in my purpose. And so in my angst and anguish and angry tears, I basically called out and said, look, I want to walk in my purpose. Don't let me miss this. And sure enough, it was declared to me, and it was declared so clear and so obvious that I couldn't deny it. And that's what I had asked for, because I will overthink and overanalyze something and not do it. And so all the signs pointed me in this direction. In fact, when I would get into these fits where I needed to kind of boost myself, I would use personal development. And so I would, look on YouTube, find a good video, and that would really help get me motivated and get me going for the day. And I grabbed my phone after having my angry fit with God the next morning, and I put on a video that I intended to watch. However, my phone flipped out of my hands, and I knew whatever video it landed on, that's what I was supposed to watch. And it ended up being a past life regression. So I was like, oh my God. One, I was thrilled because I had forgot about past life regressions. I had heard of them 25 years ago when Dr. Brian Weiss was on Oprah. Mm-hmm. And then again, later after that, there was a psychic by the name of Sylvia Brown who used to frequent the Montel Williams show. And so, that was something I was super intrigued about back then, 25 years ago. But I thought you either had to be a doctor with, psychiatrist background, which I didn't want to do, or you had to have superpowers and be a psychic. And so I'm watching this video and I'm all intrigued and I'm like, oh my God, this is so fascinating. And I didn't really connect to me yet that okay, this is why I was watching this video. But I'm watching the video and I realized wait, how cool would that be if I could do that? I'd be amazing. I would love to do this. I want to do this. And I started scrolling and I looking through the comments and digging around. And I realized, wait, the guy doing the video was just a hypnotherapist. And I was like, are you kidding me? So then I started doing research. what does that entail? Because I had already went through a path where I stopped and started school several times throughout my life. As a child, I always knew I wanted to be a healer. And so I thought that meant I had to be a doctor. And so I thought I had to go through 12 years of medical school because of the specialty that I wanted, excuse me, to do. And I was like, I don't want to go back to school. I don't want to become a psychologist or a psychiatrist. Like, kudos to them. But, I was just like, I don't want to start all over. This was happening and I was already 38 years old, so I was like, who wants to go another 8 years back?
Yeah, I can identify because I found Brian Weiss about 2008. And I kept trying to get an appointment with him and couldn't get an appointment because he was backlogged so long. And like you, I thought it was something what only psychiatrists or psychologists could do, like you. So I identify with that.
And when I had heard, when I first learned of him, I was, I think, 19. And at that time, he was charging, several $100.
Yeah.
And he had like a 5-year waiting list. And so I was like, never mind. And that was back in the day when you had to call 0 for the operator and actually call the office and talk to somebody.
Yeah. I tried to get an appointment.
Yeah, there was no website. Like I had to call his in the back of his books, they have like their publisher's info. So all of that was on 411 or the operator. And, nowadays we go to Google for stuff like that. But I just didn't, when I first learned about it, I was so intrigued and I thought it was amazing, but I didn't think that was something like a normal person could do. Or at least I had a different path in mind. So I was like, I'm not going to do that, So when I learned that I could be a hypnotherapist, I started doing my research, and there were so many synchronicities that I could not deny. Like I knew what I was supposed to do. So I ended up enrolling in school for the purpose of learning hypnosis to be a hypnotherapist so that I could learn past life regression. And then in that process, that's how Renee and I met. We met through a group on Facebook for...
Yeah, she's my colleague.
And
so,
Renee...
So tell the story, because I like the way you tell it.
Okay. Well, Renee and another girl that was, we all became friends. We were in this group. She posted a lot of books, a lot of, educational material. And so that brought my attention to both of them, because everyone else was talking about like tarot and la stuff. And I like to read like science and facts. And, I like to get into like the meat of things, not just the woo woo and the ideologies. So that's kind of what sparked our initial conversations, I believe, because we had been talking about some books. And then Renee posted, I signed up for school. And I was like, wait, I did too. And it ended up being the same school, and we had the same start date. So we were destined to meet, in which we actually were later, which was just confirmed through one of our sessions. But so that's initially how we met. And then we went to school. In the process of me going to school, though, however, we both went to the most accredited school in our country. They're very thorough, very detailed. It's a year-long extensive program with over 700 hours of training. Their particular way of training for past life regressions is very clinical and dry to me. And it didn't really mesh well with how I thought it should be used or could be used or can be used.
So how did you feel? What kind of method? Because I was watching YouTube on different methods, and we're taught very clinically. Nothing, anything. It's just clinical.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And
it's important. But for past life regressions, I'm interested in other methods. And now that we have the training, we are able to create our own methods of past life regressions and our own style of hypnotherapy, because we have the tools to do that. So what other methods were you drawn to, or styles?
Well, like being an artist, it's like clinically you learn how to do this, is how you paint a tree. But then once you become an artist, you get your own flow of doing things. And so I had studied a little bit on past life regressions, quantum healing, which was, I don't want to say founded by Delores Cannon, but she stumbled across it.
She popularized it. There were people who did similar.
Yeah, she kind of packaged it into something that everyone could digest. There's also Life Between Lives, which is in essence the part of you once you die and you're in heaven, so you're not, or depending on what you believe. So
Is that Edgar Casey's book, or which one?
no, that is with,
Oh,
oh
The
gosh.
Method. Okay.
The Method is with why did I just forget his name? Sorry, I'm having a human moment, which I'm allowed.
Not Brian
We're all
Weiss.
humans.
Brian
No,
Weiss.
not Brian Weiss.
No, he's
No.
many.
Why am I losing my train of thought? It's going to come to me. I'll come back.
Okay.
He's another author. He wrote Life Between Lives. Oh my God, I'm having a human moment. It'll come to me. I'll Google it. But anyway, so he has that modality. He was also a psychiatrist, I believe. Brian Weiss was a doctor of psychology. So they come from a more scientific background, where Delores was actually trained by her husband, who was in the army at the time in Vietnam, and they were overseas. And
Michael
she learned.
Newton?
Yes.
Michael Newton. Yeah.
Yes, Michael Newton. Yep. And he also has a school, an institute for Life Between Lives. However, you have to already be a certified hypnotherapist, and you have to be able to prove that you've done 1,000 hours in sessions. So they don't just take any willy-nilly weekend, Vegas course and allow you to come through. So again, he's scientifically based. He's a psychiatrist or psychologist. I don't remember. So I lost my train of thought, but yes. So pretty much regressions.
So
there's
that kind of asks. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just saying there's layers to past life regression. So there's like clinical, which I feel is maybe the top layer. And then there's kind of that you can dig a little deeper and kind of go within different aspects of the past life. So you can look at the life between lives. You can look at other things. There's layers to it.
So we were talking about what type of regressions or techniques that you were drawn to.
For past lives in general?
For past life regressions, yes.
So for past lives, it depends. So I kind of go intuitively on that, based off of what happens in the conversation beforehand. I do know a technique where it's a little more hypnotherapist based, but it can take a client into a very deep state very quickly. And then there's also the more longer drawn out induction, which is more of like it's more of like a progression. So it's like allows the body to really relax, allows them to get comfortable, and it allows them to just kind of enjoy the process. And so I think that's usually best for beginners. But if someone's very used to doing hypnosis or being under hypnosis, or they've had a couple of sessions, then I think the other way works just as well. Yeah. So it really just depends on the client.
So I was really drawn to people like Alba Weinman, her style. That just kind of blew me away when I first watched it. And then there were other people doing regressions that I was blown away with, but they were kind of, I don't know. So I was drawn to, I watched all kinds. And what I'm really drawn to is the Hindu style, or the, they've been doing it for thousands of years. And I really loved it. And we know hypnotherapy, they teach us, is about 5,000 years old, but they have typography of hypnosis going back in ancient Egypt 65,000 years ago.
Correct.
And it describes, so.
Yeah, as far as we know, it started in Egypt, and then it spread to Greece. And then it spread to, the European.
Yeah, they learned it, there in Egypt, or what was known as then Kemet. But tell us a little bit about QHHT. What is it?
So QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And what it basically is, it's a submodality of hypnosis or hypnotherapy, where you take a person into hypnosis, you take them through their past life. They'll venture through, anywhere between 1 and 3 lives, depending on how much time you have, or how long those lives are taking. And then you take them through their death process. And the purpose of that is that going through that process as a human in this life, you're able to revisit things that have messages for you or information for you that's there to help you in this life now. And it could be a physical ailment, it could be mentally, it could be spiritually, it could be emotionally, it could be family connections, so many different reasons why. We don't pick the reasons. We can have an intent when we go into the session, but your subconscious mind brings forward what it is that you need to know. And so then you experience this, and then you watch your death. And then from there, I have a few different ways of doing things. So I've kind of started to grasp my own technique in my own way. But we can go venture off into spirit world, heaven, the other side, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're comfortable with calling it. It doesn't matter. And we'll meet, we can meet family members. We can meet friends, family, animals, pets, people that have passed, your angels. We can speak to your higher conscience. We can, there's so many different things. We can call on people and speak to them, or angels. So there's so many, depending on what is happening with the client and what's going on in their life and what's going to be most beneficial is really what happens after that. The traditional Delores canon QHHT method is to go through the life, go through death, and then call in the subconscious and speak to them and find out what's going on with the client. They'll come in with a list of questions. And I always tell people, bring questions that you would want to ask God, or that you would want to ask a crystal ball, or that you would want to ask a psychic if you knew you were going to get the real answers. And so it could be about your life. It could be about past experiences. It could be about family, spiritual, universal, whatever. But bring your questions and put them in order of what's most important, and we'll go from there.
So that brings to mind, for our listening audience, if you have any questions about what QHHT is or any concerns you might have, be sure to post them in the chat and we'll answer those questions. But for someone that may be curious and may want to have a session or try it, what if they're worried about, well, I want to do it, but I don't want certain things to be revealed, things that I don't want other people to know. What would you tell that person?
Well, starting off in the session, we do a full interview. I want to know everything about your life leading up to this point, because a lot of times there's synchronicities, there's patterns, there's circles, there's maybe even things that you don't realize because you're living life through your own lens, in your own skin, in your own body. But by bringing a lot of this stuff up too, it allows for kind of all your doors to be open so that we can get the information that the client needs in their session. But if there's things that you don't want to talk to me about, or you don't want anyone else to know, first of all, the only people in the session that are ever going to be allowed to be in the session is yourself and I. If you come and you've got, if it's in person and you show up with a friend or family member, they got to go, or we have to reschedule. Right now, however, I'm not doing anything in person. It's all on Zoom. So I always tell people, make sure you have a babysitter, make sure that the animals are cared for, someone is there, because my sessions are 4 to 5 hours long. So we need uninterrupted time. And so doing that allows them to have that time with just me. It's just me. I'm not there to judge. But if they don't want to share something, that's okay. And even if they don't want it to come up in hypnosis. So people go to hypnosis to get control, not to lose control. You're never out of control. You know exactly what's happening. You know what you're saying. You know what's going on. And you're simply just not going to tell me. And if it's something like maybe there was sexual abuse or trauma, it would only really come up if it was necessary and important for your healing. If it's some weird little secret, maybe you have some skeleton that you've never really told anybody, or you did something that you're guilty or ashamed of, that could be part of the reason why you're even needing this session. But, if you've got something you're trying to hide under the rug, if you really don't want it to be shared or to be known, you won't share it. It won't come out. And it could hinder you in your own growth and your own progress, but it doesn't affect the session for the most part.
Right. And what people don't realize is our subconscious mind is always going to protect us. So you won't even have to worry about that. No. But what if someone is kind of fearful? How do they get over that? They might be feeling like, if I do this, am I going to come under the control of the devil or something like that? What would you say?
So what I've told other people is you need to be more fearful of what you're doing in your actual day-to-day lives. Most people don't realize when they're putting themselves in circumstances or even places that are of low vibrational energy. For instance, how many of us have been to a bar? Whether you drink now or not, you've been to a bar at some point. A bar is one of the lowest vibrational places you can go. That's why a lot of bars historically are haunted, because it's a low vibrational place. That's where low energies are going. They're in a rut, they're not feeling good, life is not happening, whatever it is. And they're going there to kind of leave a part of their bad self at the bar and maybe drink some of it away, or maybe they're going to have a good time. But that is a perfect example of a place that is low vibrational that you really should be worried about, that most people don't think about. But if it was because you're scared of the experience, and this is something anyone can do right now, you can close your eyes and look up towards the middle of your forehead as your eyes are closed. And just by closing your eyes and looking upwards, you're actually putting your brain into the first step, the first barely top level of hypnosis. It's changing your brainwave. And that's all hypnosis is. It's a different levels of your brainwaves. It's a very natural thing. We have it every single day, right before you go to sleep. That 10 minutes right before you're about to be asleep, when you're like awake and still kind of thinking, but you can feel yourself drifting towards a dream, or you can feel yourself drifting off. That's a state of hypnosis. It's a natural state of hypnosis. And you're not scared every time you go to bed and close your eyes. So it's literally like going to sleep. In essence, you're not asleep, but it's like being very deeply relaxed, and I'm just guiding you through a process. So it's as though I'm kind of guiding you through a dream. And at any
Right.
point, if there was ever anything that you felt like you didn't want to see or felt scary, you would verbalize that, you would express that to me, and I would just remind you, because we'll talk about it even before it started, but I would remind you to just step away and watch it as though it's a movie. How many of us watch gory movies, video games, and TV programs, and murder mysteries and stuff all over the news, real life or
Mhm.
imagined, all day long? It doesn't scare us anymore. We're kind of deprogrammed from it. So I can say just simply watch it as a movie, because it's not you in this lifetime. It's something that it's like when you have a dream, it's something that you're remembering and you're just
Mhm.
rewatching. And so you have that disconnect. And that's truly where like the magic happens with the healing, because you're able to revisit something that may be holding like a block on you. It may be causing a physical ailment. It may be causing some sort of just stress that carried over into this life. But because you're not living that moment anymore, it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel scary.
Right. Right. And listening audience, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. But you know what I like to say to people is it's like listening to a good song. When I
Mm,
hear an old song that I used to love back in the day, it takes me back in the day and I'm engrossed in that. And I used to say it takes me to another world. Now I know it's hypnosis. Or when
yeah.
you read that good book and you
Yeah, I
you
was just gonna say
you're
it's just
imagining all the
watchable.
places you're reading
Yeah,
about, that's hypnosis. So
and maybe you don't
that
listen to
is
audiobooks, or maybe you don't even read anymore, but we can all remember that time when we were kids in elementary school and your parents read to you, or the teacher would read whatever it was, James and the Giant Peach, and you could see it in your mind, and you could kind of see like a
hey, I
screenplay.
still read those and visualize
It's the
it.
same. It's the same. That's what you're
Yeah,
experiencing.
right.
It's just a little
And
more
then
clear, because it comes to you like a picture, or it can come to you kind of like what we call now gifs, like a picture with little bits of information or little bits of movement, or it can be a full movie, or you can be fully submerged into it, like you are the character and like you are
right.
going through it in real life. And so it just depends on the person. But just like a picture, they say a picture holds 1,000 words. If I were to hold up a picture and say, hey, remember this memory? This is your prom, or this is when you graduated, or this is your 16th birthday. You could look at one picture and you could tell me probably a million details. Oh my God, I remember I didn't know what to wear, and this broke, and my mom was screaming, and this happened, and blah, blah, blah. And you could go on and on and on and tell me all about that whole day or that whole moment from one picture. It's the same thing when you're in the segment. So you have this knowledge that comes to you and just kind of floods in, and you remember, and you're able to share it. You can tell me what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you were concerned about, I mean, you can physically see what you were wearing, but you can remember other details that maybe, you would obviously wouldn't have known any other way. So it just kind of comes.
So that brings us to the next question. So there are what Delores calls left brain people and right brain people. And I've heard other regressionists say that they cannot work with left brain people. They can't have a successful session unless they become more right brained, and they tell them to listen to hemi-sync music before the session so that they have a good session. What would you say to that?
That, without speaking badly, but with being frank, if a hypnotherapist or a hypnotist tells you that they can't work with left brain people, it's because they're not well trained. They don't know what they're doing. There's no reason. So what the difference between a left brain and a right brain person is, for anyone listening or watching, a left brain person, your left side of your hemisphere on your brain is your logical side. Those are people who are very math driven. They like numbers. Maybe they're engineers. They're very statistical. Those are your left brain type people. Your right brain is more creative. They're into art and music and, creating things. They're just a little more on the maybe they're writers or singers. They're really just in tune with kind of going inside more, right? Where the left side's more logical. The other side's going to be a little more emotional and therefore creative. There's no reason why you can't go into hypnosis. Again, this is a natural state that you go through every single day. So if someone tells you that they can't put you through because of a certain way that you are, that means they're not well trained, and you should probably just not work with them because they're either lazy or not well trained.
Right.
There are a lot of, pop-up weekend shows, whether it be at like Vegas or online now. Anyone can go on Udemy and get a certificate for anything now for anywhere from $16 to $100. But that doesn't mean that you're good. It doesn't mean that you actually know what you're doing. And anyone can read a book and they can practice these things. However, in my opinion, I wouldn't want someone working with my mind unless they actually know what they're doing. Again, hypnosis is a natural state of mind. So we've all been on the freeway if you're an adult and you drive and you've missed your turn where you knew you were supposed to go because you go to this place every day, but you missed your turn or you missed your exit. And that's what's called environmental hypnosis. Or maybe you drove home from work and you got home and you're like, geez, I don't even remember driving home. I was in my mind, I was in the zone or whatever. Or maybe as an athlete, that in the zone, that's being in hypnosis. So if you're in a state of hypnosis all day long, how is it possible that someone can't put you in hypnosis?
Right.
That doesn't make sense. So only someone who doesn't know what they're doing is going to verbalize those types of things. There are little I don't want to call them tips and tricks because it's not a tip or trick really, but there are things that you can do to help you be
Techniques.
be more right-brained or left-brained for that matter. So if you are worried that you are too logical of a person and maybe you're doubting this and you don't think it will work, you can color. Go get an adult coloring book or a kid coloring book or start drawing or, grab some crayons and some pencils and color. And if you really want to amp it up, use your opposite dominant hand. If you're left-handed, use your right hand. If you're right-handed, use your left hand. And that's going to really fire up because, again, when you're using your right hand, it fires the opposite hemisphere of your brain, your left brain. So if you're trying to be more right-dominated because you really want to make sure that you're going to be able to tap into your creative part and make this work, start using your left hand more if you're right-handed. So use your non-dominant hand and start creating again. You want to remember the simplicity of being a child when we had imagination. And this is why kids now are talking more and more about past life experiences, or at least it's being maybe televised more and more in the media because of social media and the way that the world is now compared to maybe the 80s or 70s. But kids are talking about it and they're telling their parents things like, and it's not just their imagination, but it's because they still have their simplicity. So go back to a simple, get creative, get in the flow, whatever it is. If you like working with wood, work with wood or clay or color or arts or painting or singing or dancing, whatever it is, go back into doing something that you enjoy. And that creative spark will really help propel you. Listening to the beats, the binaural beats or the
solfeggio frequencies.
And the heavy sync, those do work because what it is, it's a tone that's simply bouncing from left and right ear. And so it's allowing your brain hemisphere to go left, right, left, left, and just it allows your brain to sync together better instead of being dominant on one side or the other. So it does help. But if a therapist is telling you, well, oh, this didn't work because you didn't do your homework and you didn't do what I told you to do and you didn't allow it, it's because they didn't have the right techniques and the right training and the right skill to facilitate the client.
Right. So
or
what does it feel like though?
Because it wasn't appropriate for them to get as far. There's that as well. There's two different sides, but it's not fair for the hypnotherapist to blame the person and give them guilt about it not maybe going a certain way they anticipated it to go.
Right, exactly. So for someone who hasn't had one, what does it feel like? And so explain what it feels like and what they can expect. You kind of touched on it quite a bit, but
I would say for each person it's different. Again, it can be just pictures and you'll kind of know what's happening. It could be like a picture with little bits of movement. It could be like watching a movie, or it could be like you're fully submersed in it and you're actually doing it like live action. For each person it's different. But
what if you hear but not see?
Oh yeah, you can hear, you can taste, you can smell. But eventually you will get to see, because it's just like when you step outside and it's real bright and you're outside for maybe an hour, you went swimming or you're whatever, right? Driving around, you come in the house and the house is dark and it takes a while for your vision to adjust and you're kind of waiting because everything's dark. It just takes a while for your mind's eye to pick up the details. And that's where a skilled therapist will really give certain cues and allow the client to really adjust their eye around what's happening and allow them to kind of remember. We have to remember how to do that. It's not something we often do. Some people do. Some people do it in their sleep. I have actually seen some of my past life regressions in dreams. So was I revisiting them in a dream or was I back in my past life? I don't know. But, it just depends. But it often very much from what I've been told, it feels like a dream physically, if that makes sense. So it's as though you're remembering or it's like a dream.
So Alisha, are all QHHT practitioners hypnotherapists like you?
No. It actually annoys me when people say that they are. Because, for instance, if you went to REI, which is like a outdoor camping store, okay, or wherever, you took a weekend course to learn survival, wilderness tactics, okay, and maybe they teach you how to tie a tourniquet, and maybe they teach you how to tie sutures in emergency. That doesn't mean that when you leave, now you're a doctor or a surgeon. You're not. You took a weekend course and you learned a trade. Now, does that mean that they know how to hypnotize you and do this specific thing? Yeah, of course. They're going to learn how to do it. That's the purpose of the class. Doesn't mean that just with that class that they're amazing. Doesn't mean that they aren't. They could be. But usually when people like take a course like this to learn it, it's because they're called to do so. It's not something most people are like, hey, there's this course on past life regressions I'm going to go take. It's usually something deeper. It's usually some sort of like soul connection to that. They want to learn how to do this. But I don't think that they should call themselves hypnotherapists, because they're learning the art of hypnosis, but they are not learning the science behind it. They're not learning the theories behind it. They're not learning how to be a therapist or a counselor. They're not learning any psychology behind it. And so therefore, I don't think it's fair for them to call themselves.
And they're not trained to be a hypnotist, because there are a lot of tools we have under our belts that they would not have access to or know how to do. So,
but it's
so her QHHT is a technique. It's not like it's not. You're not skilled in it to be a hypnotist.
I would say that it's okay to call themselves a hypnotist, though, because even stage hypnotherapy, and it's entertainment. It is real. It's a thing, but it's kind of corny. It's, you're not going to come see me for hypnotherapy on the sidewalk, like,
the thing about hypnotists, though,
that's like stage stuff, but they are learning the skill and the art of
the skill of a hypnotist, but they're not, if you don't have a certification through a union, you
No.
cannot call
Yeah.
yourself a hypnotist.
No, it's
legally.
based on
So,
education.
but
Yeah,
a lot of
legally.
people do. So you
Yeah.
have to ask, are you
Legally, there's levels. So
hypnotherapist or how
hypnotist,
long? Yeah.
certified. Yeah. And so your education determines your title. In fact, as a hypnotherapist, with the amount of education that we received, we have more training and more skill than those who go to school for psychology or psychologist, even though that they do hypnosis or hypnotherapy with some of their clients. The reason for
And
that being,
physicians.
yeah, and physicians, we did almost, well, I know Renee and I both did over 1,000 hours. We probably
Yeah.
both closer to 5,000 hours in studying and training and practice. But our school was over 700 hours in just the art of hypnotherapy. And again, psychologists, psychotherapists, physicians, they learn how to do it, but it's like a quick segment. It's like one chapter out of everything else that they learn. So they might practice it more and they might go into it more and use it more with clients, but they're learning as they go, where we did a direct skill set that was directed only to what we do, and over an entire year.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to a question. There's an article that I'd like to share. I'm going to wait 1 second here. I'm going to share my screen. Because it's a bit kind of a big uproar in the psychiatric community, where 1 second here, where the Psychiatric Association does not want to recognize QHHT, yet many in the medical profession, they actually practice past life regressions for a lot of their clients. And so this article here from the National Library of Medicine, the researcher here is giving a different view. Let me just read the abstract. It says, past life regression therapy is used by some physicians in cases with some mental diseases, anxiety disorders, mood disorders, gender dysphoria, and all of these have been treated using past life regression therapy by some doctors on the assumptions that they reflect problems in they reflect problems in their past lives. So although it's not supported by the Psychiatric Association, few medical associations have actually condemned it as unethical in this article. But the researcher is arguing that past life regression therapy is unethical for two basic reasons. First, it's not evidence-based. Past life regression is based on reincarnation hypnothesis, or it's supposed to be I'm believing this is supposed to be
hypnothesis. They're saying that the thesis based off of hypnosis.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But this hypnothesis is not supported by evidence. And in fact, it faces some insurmountable conceptual problems. If patients are not fully informed about these problems, they cannot provide an informed consent. And hence, the principle of autonomy is violated. Second, past life regression therapy has a great risk of implanting false memories in patients and thus causing significant harm. This is a violation of the principle of non-malfeasance, which is surely the most important principle in medical ethics.
Okay,
so I wanted to share that because first of all, there's some flaws with that, and we'll go into them a little bit, but I wanted you to speak to that.
So my first problem with that is that, okay, one, real or imagined, past life regression is one of the most medically, in my opinion, therapeutic things that you can do. Because when you find the root of a problem, just by acknowledging it, that is the catalyst to change. Period, point blank. Scientifically proven over and over again. They will not dispute that. when you find the root of the problem and you unplug that root and you separate it, now that problem doesn't affect you anymore. So if they're to say, so it's kind of like an oxymoron to say, well, now that you've brought up other things in a past life, now that could possibly affect somebody. Does it affect you when you watch reality TV and you watch someone else's life that's not your own? Does it affect you? Like, and I mean, affect you to the point where you're like, oh my God, I've got anxiety because I'm so upset that Kim and Courtney got into an argument on the Kardashians. No, I mean, does it affect you in other ways? Like, we watch their studies against violence, and especially kids with violent video games and things like that, and watching violence on TV. Can that affect you? Sure. But this is a short moment that you are not, again, fully like immersing, you're not owning it. Okay. And then at the same time, a trained hypnotherapist tells your subconscious mind, when you're done, we are closing the door. We are closing this chapter. It will not affect you moving forward. So if there are psychologists or medical professionals who are not doing this, then that could be where the issue is. Again, we are more thoroughly trained than a lot of people, even in the medical field, who do hypnosis. So that's a broad thing. However, just whether you wanted to go for a spiritual excursion or a healing excursion or to be a tourist and just see what all this is about, you should not be worried about anything negatively happening to you, because with the experience of visualizing, seeing, understanding, and going through something and understand what the lesson of that was that you needed to learn, or the thing that you needed to leave in the past, there have been what we call spontaneous healings by the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, that have taken place.
And of course, the Hindu and Buddhist cultures have experienced that. But I wanted to explore this a little bit more, because all these claims he's made in the abstract, when he outlines how it's done, it's not the way it's done. So I'm going to share that with you as well.
Plus, you got to think too with past life regression. So they're saying, you can't prove any of this is real. Well, you can only prove the things that are real to a certain point within history if it was documented. And how many people live normal, what Delores Cannon called was potato picking lives? You lived a normal life where you were just a farmer, you picked potatoes, you really had nothing exciting happening in life. And your big event of that lifetime was when you got dressed nice and you went to the market and you met somebody, or or something, you bought a special pie and you met some old sweet lady and she gave you a flower and it changed your life because she had a message with that flower, whatever. Most people live very simplistic lives, especially when we're dealing with past lives. And when you're dealing with times that are not documented, there's no history written about them, or maybe they were in some village, or they lived in the Amazon and they were in some tribe, or, whatever. They don't have that documentation, but there have been millions of actual past life regressions that have been documented, and they've actually been able to fact check. So whether it's real or imagined doesn't matter as long as you're receiving healing. And as long as
and that's similar to a lot of the Hindu regressionists. They say it works. So, and we've been doing this for thousands of years. But here's the thing. This is the statement from the researcher. He says that the hypnotist consciously or unconsciously asks leading questions. And under that state of suggestibility, the hypnotized subject follows and complies with the initial request. For example, the hypnotist may say, go back to a life as a soldier in the American Revolution. Taking cues from that hypnotist, the subject may begin to behave in a manner that he believes is appropriate. But that's not the technique. That's not. They say they say the method is mind control and manipulating the client to have a certain outcome, but that's not how it's done, the technique. So I wanted you to speak to that.
But even then, what my thing is what's the difference between that and imagery? If I say close your eyes and imagine you're at the beach.
No, this is like not allowing the person to go.
Kentucky and you've never been to the beach one day in your life, just to close your eyes, go into a deep state of relaxation and imagine the beach is not going
No,
to
what
change
he's
your life.
suggesting in this is that we're telling them to go into we're asking them to go
Well, we
into a
don't.
life, but
Well,
not
good. I was gonna say,
necessarily a specific life. It's whatever the subconscious is leading them to, right?
exactly.
It's
So
not
you
like
set
you're
an
really
intention.
manipulating and misleading them to a certain particular path
You
of
set an
regression.
intention, and then the client's mind or their angels or God, the other divine team that's involved in this, guides them to what that is that they need to see and what they need to do. If you're telling someone go to life when you were a soldier, if they didn't have that life, then all they're simply doing is imagining. It's not even a real past life regression. At that point, it's just guided imagery. So again, real or fake, someone who's doing it this way, the way that this is stated, they're not a good hypnotherapist, because you're
Yeah,
not
and
supposed
so the
to
researcher
guide
was
them.
unclear about how Delores Cannon made this technique, because the way they mention it in this article is not how it's actually done. So they
No,
were going step by step how the past life regressionists do the session, and it wasn't at all
no.
like the
No.
method
So
that you're doing.
when we do a session, again, I ask the person to set the intention.
Right.
We discuss their questions that they may have, whether it be about their past, their family, a marriage, whatever, right? Career, dreams, whatever their questions are about. But we set the intention that whatever is supposed to be shown to them is going to be shown. And actually, I encourage my clients, if they're religious, if they want to say a prayer before we start, do so. Let's say a prayer. We can do it together. You can do it separately, all by all means. But excuse me, I also, when I start my sessions, um, remind them that they are protected. And I have them do imagery of being protected, of the white light coming from source, from God,
Mm-hmm.
whoever they believe in. Maybe they believe in Buddha or whatever, but we protect them. And that going back to that question that you had asked me about being protected, um, you're always protected. And if you want protection, you ask for it. And the universe or God, whatever you believe in, provides it. Simple. We do
Mm-hmm.
things in our day-to-day life that actually lower our protective guard, like drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes. All of those things lower our vibration, right? And that makes us more susceptible. But we don't think of that as scary. How many
And
people
what
smoke
people don't
cigarettes?
realize is entities respect universal laws. They know they don't have the right to attach to you. Only
No.
you watch these scary movies and you believe that you're putting yourself into a dangerous situation. But hypnosis,
Hollywood has painted a different idea because it's got to be entertaining. It's Hollywood,
right?
so they've painted a different idea for people to understand.
So this brings up the next point. So does QHHT help transgender clients overcome identity issues? And the article kind of did say that a lot in the medical field does help transgender clients through hypnosis. They use it directly themselves. So what would you say to them?
So I actually read about studies, and I wish that I got on briefly trying to find some of them. I just didn't have time. Today was Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to any of the fathers watching. But there are studies, clinical based studies, peer reviewed journaled, I believe, that reflect that confusion somewhere between a past life carried over into this life, causing confusion in the mind of transgenders. However, that study that I heard about is 15 or 20 years old.
Oh,
And
well, this one,
science now states that when looking at the transgender mind, the hypothalamus is actually larger and different than other individuals. And so they do believe that there's a scientific compound that causes for transgenders to truly be different.
mm-hmm.
That it's not just that they woke up and decided, oh, I want to be, a man or woman, or I want to be weird, I want to be different, I want to be controversial today. That's not the case. That there actually is something going on, genetically or scientifically in the mind that's causing them to have this. So could it be the result of the past life regression? Sure. I don't have all the facts on that. But what I would suggest is for a lot more of our transgender community to go find out. Why don't they
So
explore
So what I wanted to do is share this research because the psychiatrists that developed that hypothesis actually is another psychiatrist that did not believe in past life regressions, but he kept running into this issue in his work. So he did a study, and this study, they were not able to discount it like they did with Brian Weiss, but he did believe that these many mental disorders can be traced with unresolved conflict in a previous life. And so his name was Ivan Stevenson. So in the DSM-5, which I think it's been removed now, but it did say that a lot of transgender individuals do have body dysphoria. And so sometimes going into a past life regression, they can get those conflicts resolved and decide afterwards what they want to do with their life.
And it doesn't mean that like they're going to have a past life regression and decide, okay, I don't want to be, I was a man and now I'm a woman and now I want to be back a man again. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It might just mean that they come out of it and have more acceptance.
No, because first of all, they don't feel comfortable in their bodies.
Exactly. So, I just want to make that clear for the client, for whoever's watching, so that they're not thinking something other than. But no, there are studies on it that go back as far as 20 years ago, because I had heard about them and read about them as early as 2000, I think, or 99. So
hypnosis,
I psychic Sylvia Brown, and I understand she's not a medical professional or maybe even accredited, but she referenced it in some of her books even, and stated that not just the transgender community, but schizophrenia, that issues from schizophrenia can stem from past life stuff, that certain things they carried over, certain doors weren't closed, and so they just had a certain openness about them that later got triggered in this lifetime for whatever reason. But our understanding with hypnosis is that we should not be working with people with schizophrenia. That needs to be left to the psych department and field.
The doctors, medical profession. But what's interesting though is that hypnotherapy and even past life regression, it could be a very powerful tool for individuals who are transgender or anyone who outside of the LGBTQ community. Anyone who has issues with self-image and self-esteem, past life regressions, hypnotherapy is an excellent tool for helping you build it up, reprogramming your inner landscape. But here's the thing, and why many of the Psychiatric Association members don't believe in past life regressions, because of what Carl Sagan said. He said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Reincarnation is an extraordinary claim, but Stevenson's investigations are not extraordinary evidence. But there has been a lot of people in the Psychiatric Association that's tried to put studies on the records that got, blasted. Stevenson was the first one that they could not, because there has been attempts to compile, but they didn't even include all the records that Delores Cannon had done. She's been doing work since the 60s. She has case after case after case. They didn't mention any of the female. What I noticed, they didn't mention any female regressionists. None of the work that they compile. So it's a very biased study. So what my point in wanting to do this or bring this to the attention of everyone is simply because you have to think critically, and just because it's a study in medical journals doesn't make it true. So you have to do your own research.
Even if a study can be, you can show your outcome of the study to lead either way. And even when reading a study, you have to use your critical mind to really depict, okay, what were they trying to do? Look at how they did it. There's so many different ways to conduct studies, blind, double blind, all these different factors that come into studies that most people don't understand. They don't study, they don't know the science of. So they just read it and take it as fact and golden. But to simply say, well, because you can't prove it, it shouldn't be true, then why do we have millions of people believing in religion?
Right. So that kind of discounts the Buddhist and Hindu culture. With that's a regular practice,
It
and
can
it's
discount
been done thousands and thousands of
Christianity.
years. So how are you
Lots of
discounting
stories.
that as
You can't.
evidence?
It really disproves most religions, because you can't prove a lot of things, that Jesus walked on water. You can't prove a lot of the stories that are in the Bible, or in whatever, in any religious text. You can't prove that anymore. It's not scientifically, and not a lot of the artifacts are not really around. You can't. So maybe parts of it, like, yeah, sure, we have the stone that was maybe Moses held up, or I don't know, maybe we have certain things within museums of certain artifacts and pieces, but we can't prove everything that's written in a book. But yet we
Well,
still have religion. So
that kind of makes me want to ask the question for people in the audience. Do you have to believe in reincarnation for the session to work?
no, no, because again, you close your eyes and you dream every single night. Whether you remember them or not, you dream, and dreams are symbolic. And even if this was not real and it was fake, if it was symbolic and offered you physical, mental, spiritual, emotional relief, or what you would consider to be healing, or we're not allowed to use the word healing. The FDA doesn't like that. We're not allowed to say that. So if you had
Discomfort.
yeah, discomfort, whatever is happening as a benefit to you therapeutically, who cares? It's happening. You're better.
Yeah,
It
and
doesn't
so
matter. It doesn't matter if you believe. And in fact, uh, Christianity, it's not spoken about as upfront as it is in Jewish text, but it is kind of, there is a chapter in Matthew. Um, sorry, trying to think who it was. Jesus was telling, oh my God, sorry. In the
no,
book of
that's
Matthew,
okay. But
telling
that
somebody,
brings me to
John the Baptist,
the
he's
my
telling
own
him to
experience with
recognize.
having a past life regression. Um, I never believed in reincarnation for the longest time. I was like, that doesn't make sense. And now I believe in it, and I'm a practitioner myself. So,
Yeah, and I grew up in a Christian background. I grew up Christian my whole life. My mom, my grandmother. I went to school, a Christian religious school when I was younger, and I, went to church every Sunday and Bible studies on Wednesday, and I still believe in God. In fact, I believe in Him even more now. Organized religion is a little different, but I do believe in God, and I actually really, really do believe. Whereas before, I was never really sure. I went and I
so,
studied and I learned and I knew what I was supposed to believe, but I didn't really believe until now.
so can a person actually visit with a loved one who passed away?
Yes. So there's a part, when they're past and they're in spirit, within quantum healing, we visit the past life, we visit the death, and then we go forward into spirit world, heaven, the other side, whatever you want to call it. And you can be greeted with loved ones, family members, pets. They're going to have messages of love and endearing for you. They're going to maybe have
Can you give
messages.
us an example?
Um, Yes, so I have one that I have written permission to speak about. This particular person has been grieving. Their father passed away when they were 5. Their sister passed away, and their mother passed away. And I took her into a regression, and we went to the other side, and she met them, and she met them. Met like afterwards, she told me, she's like, I talked, I touched them, I held them, I hugged them, and they gave her messages. In fact, at one point, um, they stopped talking to her and they started talking to me. They were giving her messages for me, and and even myself, I've had a session, and I saw a lady that I love dearly that I took care of, and she gave me messages of encouragement and endearment. And so, we can call on certain people. In the case of a lot of my clients, they get there and their family says, "We knew you were coming." They already knew. So, or they said, "We've been trying to tell you to have this session. We've been trying to get you to do this, and we're so glad you finally came. You finally listened." So, yeah, they are there. And in fact, in the message that they tell everybody is that we're always with you. So even though they pass, they're always with you. There's a part of them that's always connected to you, even though they're, in heaven or the other side doing what it is that they need to do.
Very good. Because I wanted to say when I had my session, I got to see my uncle, and he was his old self, and I was like, "Oh, he looks like his old self." And we were communicating. I saw my dad, he gave me a hug, and he looked like his old self, and it was like, wow.
And as a
This is
practitioner,
amazing.
I can't deny what I see. I mean, I'm guiding you, and there's a part of me that I do sometimes connect and I actually see what's happening. Not always, but I'm guiding you, but I can't deny the emotions that come through. I mean, Renee, you saw your uncle and you burst in tears, and it's like you can't deny that overwhelming love that you see that comes through. It's
Whew,
it's
my eyes are getting steamy.
it's an honor. It's an honor for me to see my clients have that experience and to be able to go through it. And it's an honor for me to be able to take them there. But it's also an honor to kind of just be like the fly on the wall and be able to experience that with them.
So, since many children believe in or they can remember their past lives, if you just sit and talk to children, you'll find out they actually do remember their past life. Because I remember as a child remembering stuff and thinking stuff that children at that age don't think about, or
Well, and
supposed to
you used
think
to be a
about.
teacher. I mean, I'm sure you probably had even other kids come tell you things that they're about their dreams or whatever, and you'd be like, "What?"
Right,
Or
or
they
something
knew
that
things. And you're like, "How do you know that? You're
or
four.
tell
What do
you
you
something
mean?"
about somebody that they wouldn't have any clue about. But that I'm asking that question because what do you think? Is it really ethical to have a session with a child then?
No. So, okay. Kids are automatically between the ages of birth through 8. They're basically in a permanent state of hypnosis all the time. Their brains are just little sponges absorbing everything, good or bad. Dolores Cannon and other practitioners, kind of like, the mecca of the field, they all state that you should really probably wait till about 16. Um, Part of that is for maturity, part of that is for understanding, and part of that too is because they're past that like developmental hump, right? Because we all have different humps of development and training throughout our life. So again, 0 to 8, you're just a big sponge. You're learning everything you can and it's sticking. By 16, you're close enough to where you're an adult and where you may even still have some remembrances that are more like when you were a younger child. But usually that veil closes by about the age of 9, 10 the latest, as far as I'm like remembering past lives. But they're still a little more connected because they're still closer in age than someone who's 40, you know. But what I have been told in a session, because I actually asked for my son, who's very curious and wants to experience, was that he's capable and it would be fine for him. But they said to start with, gradually and see how receptive he is to it. But I think it's best to just wait till they're 16. Now, if there's something going on with the child and that's why the parent or parents want to have this done, then it's best to do what's called a surrogate. So let's say maybe the kid is having like night terrors all the time, or these random rashes that keep coming across their body, or asthma or something, and the doctors don't know what's going on, why this is happening, what to do about it. And they want some sort of help or relief for the kid, but they don't know what to do. And they thought this would be a good avenue. Instead of putting the kid into hypnosis, mom or dad can go into hypnosis, and then mom or dad can, when we call in the subconscious to find out what's going on, directions and well, we don't call it healing, but directions and
Just relieving discomfort.
yeah, the relief of the discomfort can then be guided through the parents and therefore helping the child. And so with that being done, there are the what we call spontaneous healings or self-healings that also take place. There's numerous things
So,
written about it, but it
so,
is a thing.
so let's say, Alisha, I have been in an accident. I'm in chronic pain, my back, my knee, my ankle, or let's say I have some sort of autoimmune illness or some other condition that is crippling. Will QHHT help?
It absolutely can. First of
And
all,
give us an example.
just being in a state of hypnosis will help, because most of us don't get into a deep enough relaxation to where our body can just kind of finally go, oh, and relax and get like that relief. And so with that being said, releasing the weight of the world off your shoulders, releasing all the stress in your head, releasing whatever physically is happening to you, it gives you a chance to just be like, and so that alone can be transformational in helping with whatever's going on in your life or physically. But if you were too sick and you were unable to do it, you could also have a family member be a surrogate to help you. But
Can you give, do you have permission to use any experiences that you've helped with clients who may have?
So, yes, I'm going to use yours. I was
Okay.
debating on if I was going to say it was you or not, knowing that you would know, but everyone else wouldn't know. But I had done a session with Renee, and Renee struggled with pain in her knees. And was it your back also?
Yeah, my low back.
And so we did this session. And so what happens is we call in the subconscious. We go through the life, we go through death. We call. She actually met with some family members who had messages for her, and she spent some time with them there. She met her guardian angels or spirit guides. And then we called on her subconscious to come through and communicate with us the questions that she had pre-written. And I requested that they scan her body and check for anything that is out of alignment, needs repair, needs fixing, little touch up, whatever's going on. And they went through and they worked on her knees, they worked on her back, and they worked on some other things. And she came out of the session and she said, Alisha, I can go up my stairs now. I don't have this pain anymore. I can sleep better. So, and you could probably talk about that firsthand. That was you, but I've even had
I mean, I kept trying it. I kept saying, oh, I have to try this again. And I kept doing it. And, for the whole week after my session, I was feeling like better and better and better. And I just couldn't believe, because I was in a major car accident on the freeway, and that knee, that side was really, and it was painful. Both of my knees, actually. And so I can get up with ease. So I was amazed with that. I just could not.
When Renee was really trying to debunk it, she texted me and she said, I went up and down my stairs 15 times trying to wait for the knee to hurt, and it's not hurting yet.
So
I see the message.
I mean, that is amazing to me. So
I had another client. She has problems with irregular, menstrual cycles. She's actually had surgery 2 or 3 times. She's had a lot of female problems, and her period's never regular. And because of that, she hasn't been able to, well, now she doesn't want a child, but she wasn't able to have a child. And we finished the session and we asked for the subconscious mind to go through and repair anything that might have needed some repairing and fixing. And they did a lot of extensive work on her female organs. And there was actually things that came up. They told me about her hands needed work. She didn't mention that to me. And then I was also told about, there was something else she didn't mention. Oh, alcohol. She likes to drink alcohol.
Oh.
So they were doing some repair in her body and her liver because of the alcohol that she drinks, which I didn't know. I had no idea. But the subconscious, again, is not going to share anything with me that wouldn't be okay to be shared.
Beneficial.
And so, they went through, they repaired her. And actually, after her session ended, it was about 30 minutes later, she called me frantic. She was so thrilled. Her menstrual cycle had started, her period started, and she was thrilled because she hadn't had one in 3 or 4 months. And she never knows when they're it's always an issue. And when they do start, she's debilitated for like a week in bed. She knows when they're going to start because she's in severe pain. And she goes, oh my God, my cycle started. I'm not in pain. She was thrilled. And she's been regular since.
Oh, that's so good. I love stories like that. That's why I got into this work. And
Yeah.
then, so what I'd like you to do is clear up some misconceptions that need to be cleared up regarding QHHT, hypnosis, whatever you want to share.
The biggest myth is that, because the way Hollywood misconstrues everything, is that you're going to go into hypnosis and lose control. Nobody walks into any therapist office, for that matter, hypnotherapy or anyone else, and says, help me lose control. That's not a thing. You go to hypnosis to gain control. So whether it's your goals, whether it's fears and phobias, whether it's stop smoking, losing weight, anxiety, depression, ADD, sleep issues, we can go on and on. There's like over 150 things, right? You name it, erectile dysfunction, whatever it is, you go because you want to gain control and you're not able to. And so what we do is we help put you in more control of your actual mind instead of just the up to 12% that you actually have. Keep in mind, Einstein said he only used 10%. So if he was a genius, that means the rest of us are probably using 4% maybe. Walking around thinking we know everything, but we're able to help you connect with your subconscious mind, make those connections so that you have more control and that you can get done what you need to get done.
I have a question or a statement by, can you read it?
We don't have patients. We have clients.
Don't have, yeah.
Yeah, so we are not doctors. We don't have patients. They are clients. And so I'm guessing that's in regards to the response to the study with the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't have patients. So that verbiage doesn't pertain to us, but the ideology behind it does. But even then, if you're not using the right techniques and you're not trained the right way, and this really isn't your full 100% specialty, psychologist, you can go to school right now. You can sign up for any college, take psychology, the whole bit, get your degree, and you're going to learn maybe like one day about hypnosis. And it's up to that person to dig deeper and a little bit more. And maybe they learn a week's worth. We've done over 1,000 hours.
Yeah, but see, that research study is actually confusing because they are attacking past life regressionists, but many of the doctors in the medical profession were using it, and they actually stated it helped their clients. So who are they debunking? Is it the doctors for using it?
I'm not sure. I'd have to really read into it better and deeper, but there's an opposite to everything. Okay, you can argue everything to death one way or the other, positive or negative. Hypnosis has been used for surgeries, for pain relief, for amnesia, and also for anesthesia, for stopping.
And they wouldn't have used it if it didn't work. And so I think
times, and it's silly how sometimes we let a certain ideology, whether maybe because this person doesn't understand it well enough, or they don't understand the benefit well enough, that they want to make a whole argument and waste a whole lot of resources on making an entire study about something, when really I think, if anyone spends a decent amount of time just doing some real actual study on it, you can see both sides. So I don't know, that's kind of a tricky one. Again, you're always going to have an opposing force, always, no matter what it is, whether it's politics, religion, school, you name it. There's always an opposite end.
So before we end, are there some things you want to share that for our listening audience to know about QHHT and why it's beneficial for them?
Yeah. So QHHT is a past life regression modality. It's not all clinical. It doesn't have to be all medically based. And it's not all spiritual either, because there is a whole spiritual realm to this too. A lot of people come in with a certain level of understanding or basic understanding about things, and they leave and they are more in tune and in touch with, and maybe even more I don't know if educated is the right word, but they're leaving with more knowledge and self-knowledge, self-awareness, self-understanding. And it's not just about like me, myself, Alisha. I understand Alisha better. You kind of have a better idea of universal understanding. So that's where I say it's a little more on the spiritual realm. So maybe there you really understand that angels are real. God is real. And it doesn't matter what religion you are.
Yeah. And so
God is God. God is love. That is real. And
like
it's
you
just
learn as you go, right? As a
yeah.
practitioner, you learn as you go because things are revealed to you in a person's session about yourself that, hey, they couldn't have known that. So
Well, even as a client, I actually had past life regressions done before I became a practitioner. Before I went to school for hypnosis, that was one of the things I wanted to do before I did school. I had 3 of them done before, 4 done before. And that's when I couldn't deny what I knew. And that's what put me more in touch with not just myself, but with God and with a certain level of knowledge, that it doesn't matter what a peer-reviewed journal says to me or what someone so is arguing about it being helpful or not. I know what I've seen. I know what I've witnessed as a practitioner. I know what I've experienced as a client.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alisha, for joining me here today and
Giving
us your insights and educating us on this QHHT technique. So that's a perfect segue into talking about next week. We're going to have a lovely practitioner, Teresa Angela, who's going to talk a little bit about the spiritual aspects of this modality. And so thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you well. Join us next week for that session with Teresa Angela. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Thank you.